Good evening. Welcome to the 5-8, where we discuss each of the week's 5 most fucked up topics for 8 minutes. 5 topics, 8 minutes, 2 hosts, a guest, some singing, a lot of curse words, and as many cocktails as we deem necessary. LB, how are you?
I am well. I have a manicure. It's exciting. I
Oh, you
never
do?
have a
Look at
manicure.
that. That's nice.
It's
Fancy.
nice. I'm
Very
having some
fancy.
water. What are you drinking? You drinking your usual?
Yeah, I'm drinking my Manhattan. I didn't feel like being complicated. There's enough
I think that's a good
complications.
strategy.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah.
There's enough complications. So I want to. I was away most of the day today, so I'm not as caught up with news as I usually am. So I just kind of glanced at the headlines, and apparently, Time Magazine named its Man of the Year, and it was polio. Apparently, polio is the Man of the Year per
Oh,
Time Magazine. I don't know. Maybe I read it wrong. It's going very quickly. Uh, you know, I don't know. We're living in a very weird
very
timeline, I
weird
think.
time.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're rooting for this comeback, but
It's the comeback
apparently
nobody wants.
it's the comeback nobody wants.
Now, I mentioned Time Magazine, and time is going to be a theme of this episode
Yeah.
because we appreciate you watching us and spending your time with us, giving your time to us. And we've been thinking a lot about time and how to manage time and what to do with our time remaining between now and January 20th. And you had an experience this week that was kind of positive.
I did.
So you
I
want to
had a
tease
great
it a little bit? We're going to talk about it later,
We'll
but
talk about it later. I had a great night. I was invited by a friend. We've done it a couple years now. Hopefully, we can keep doing it. But it's on her good graces to invite me. So I was just a guest at the event. It's the RFK, the actual Robert Kennedy, and as Kerry Kennedy made a point right off the top of the event, not my brother. Um, Ripple of Hope Awards, which is the foundation is dedicated and committed to human rights and fighting for and advocating for human rights around the globe. And what they do is, with their resources and their time, is raise raise money to not just identify where human rights violations are happening, but hire and pay the lawyers to go and fight for human rights, for these causes using the court system. So there's actual measurable results, and they don't lose their court cases. It's quite a foundation, and of course, Ethel Kennedy passed away this past year. So this was the first annual event since her passing. So there was quite a bit of it that was remembering her, rightfully so. And I believe it's now, they announced that it's being renamed the Robert and Ethel Kennedy Foundation Ripple of Hope Awards from here on out. So it was, look, it's always a fascinating evening when you actually are connected to, even if you're just in the audience, foundations like this that do this level of work internationally. And so it's always fascinating. It's always fascinating and interesting people. But it was a very different vibe this year. A lot, just many layers. And we were all, I would say, the folks around me at the table, I was with had amazing table mates and incredible conversations. It was just a different level of discourse, and happening both on the stage with people speaking to us and amongst one another, just sort of processing the moment in time that we're in and what our takeaways were of the evening, what was starting to percolate and form there. Some stuff was happening there. So I wanted to
it's going to
talk
be
about that. We'll
interesting.
save that for
It's going to
the
be
end
interesting.
of
It's going to
the
be
show.
interesting to hear about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of
Yeah.
time, don't want to
Yeah.
make our guest wait any longer
We don't want to make
because
our guests
it's been
wait.
quite a day.
It's not a
So,
long flight. Yeah.
yeah, let's get to it. Should we get to it?
Okay. Let's get to it. Okay, listen, there's so much that we could talk about this week. A lot is going on. And we're kicking it off with these drones. Mostly because they're right there in your backyard, Greg Olear. I don't know what to do about it. It's so strange.
Yeah,
It's more personal, this weirdness. Yeah?
it's weird. Wait, so you hit the timer, right? We're good?
Oh god. So sorry, everybody. I'm gonna put it
On
on
the
the 5
episode
minutes.
about time,
I
we
need
need
to be
to
on time.
highlight the timer, That gives me a
Oh,
chance to take
god.
another sip of my Manhattan, or I
Okay.
guess my Weehawken, we should call it today.
Oh, okay.
I have
Yeah.
my shirt on. This was Channel Lumber, which was a store that used to exist in New Jersey and no longer does because
Oh,
we like nostalgia things. Anyway, okay. Drones. As you know, I was a little reluctant to talk about these drones because it's nobody knows anything about them. But
right.
now it won't go away. This story. So I went and I looked and I took some notes, um,
Okay.
just so we're all up to speed. Okay.
Okay.
And this is serious. I'm not joking around. A lot of this is from Tina Kelly, who's been reporting the story for the Star Ledger of Newark, which is probably the best newspaper in the state of New Jersey. It's also NJ.com. So the first thing is they're real. There's been 180 confirmed sightings and thousands of tips have gone in that people have seen
Strange.
these. My brother saw them. They're over Morris County, which is where my mom lives and my brother lives, and so they're there. It's people have been talking about it in New Jersey for weeks and weeks now, and nobody knows what they are, and everybody has their theories, and it's just a thing that's in the discourse, particularly in New Jersey. So that's the first thing. Uh, they were all over. They were over Picatinny Arsenal. That was one of the first places they were. So there's these military kind of things. They swarmed a Coast Guard cutter a couple last week or whatever.
Wow.
Um, there was also
God.
a naval weapons station in southern Jersey. I think in Monmouth County, it was hovering over that. You have, local politicians, you have sheriffs, you have House of representatives in the government in Washington talking about this, you know, and not getting many answers about it. So that's what's going on, and there's a lot of back and forth. And today, um, the White House said that they were unable to confirm any of the reports. That's what the spokesman said,
That's so
spokesperson.
strange.
Um, which, I'm able to confirm what my brother saw. So fuck you. That's the first thing. And then the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, said actually many of them are manned aircraft, flying legally within the airspace. I mean, maybe it'll be there, maybe powered by slate, I think
Listen,
is
your
what.
audio is a little fuzzy, Greg. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Oh,
but it
that's
is
okay.
maybe pull your mic a little closer or something's going
Yeah, I
on
can
there
do
with
that.
the audio.
I
Okay,
can
keep
do
going.
that. Now, the other thing I learned, because Max Boot wrote it, is it better? Uh,
Well, I have to cough now. So I don't know.
okay. Wrote a column about drones, and
So sorry.
apparently drones are covered by the same, legislation that airplanes are. So you can't just like shoot drones down. It's an antiquated legal system. So there's only so much they can do with this stuff. So that's what we know about the drones. And again, we don't know much. The governor has been a little bit cagey. Obviously, Washington's a little bit cagey. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? I have none. I
I
just
have
want to
no
get
thought.
us.
I don't know what to do with this story. So I have, you know,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to this, and I'm not trying to. It is a little lighthearted, but it's also frightening. If it's something serious, what concerns me more, almost more than whatever the seriousness is of it, is I don't want to hear about it from Donald. I don't I just all I can think about is that press conference where he's like, deal with it. It's aliens. If it's some big serious news, or it's, I don't know. Is it some submarine of a hostile foreign power? What's going on? I don't want to hear about it from him. And so I just get kicked into that, a month down the line, future month and a half of, I, I, we're going to be back in this time where we're
Yeah.
trying to learn important information from that individual
Yeah.
and
It's
his
not going to be.
corrupt picks, ugh. So
No,
that's it.
it's not.
I really don't have any knowledge or opinions other than that, other than what the hell is this? And what do you
There's
mean you can't tell us what it is?
Yeah, there's
Why
in the
can't you tell
reporting,
us?
people they're interviewing experts. Some people say, well, it's just hobbyists having fun, which is always something that they say whenever they're
That's what it felt like that at first, right? Somebody's playing a
Yeah,
prank or playing
and
around with
now
a
more
toy.
people are they're chasing drones with drones.
I know,
So there's more drones in the
it's more
sky. I
drones.
saw in the picture that we use that for the the thumbnail for this episode.
Yeah.
It does show the Italian flag. So I'm thinking maybe this is the mafia. Maybe who's to say that the mafia can't have drones? I don't know. It's
Everything
just,
comes back to The Sopranos when
it
it's
all
we're
comes back
talking
to The
about New
Sopranos.
Jersey.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's that's it. So I don't know. It could be a hostile foreign power. The guy that Van Drew, whatever his name is, talking about some Iranian battleship that was laughed off by everybody. And I will say, Iran does make drones. They make really good
Yeah.
drones. They're a very good maker of that technology.
Yeah.
But nobody knows. I don't know.
Nobody
Uh,
knows. All right, that's our lead. Our lead story is and talk point is we have no idea. This is we don't
yeah.
know. We're getting thrown into the unknown on so many layers here and levels. But we don't have to spend any more time on this because our time is precious. So we're going to cut that short by 2
Yeah. Let's
minutes
go. Let's
and
go.
because we want to get to our guest and get into the next topic.
Yeah.
Oh, the picks. Yeah, the picks.
It's the picks. It's there's that game, Fuck Mary Kill. We're gonna play Fuck Mary Nominate to a cabinet position because this is more fun. So
Yeah.
you were saying I was asking you about Kash Patel being the director of the FBI and how horrible that would be, and is he worse than J. Edgar Hoover, who ran the FBI for decades, obviously, and that led into a discussion about it's not even really the worst pick. So I think what we should do is just go through, tell us who you think is rank them one, two, three. I'm talking about Tulsi and Cost and RFK Brainworm there, Mr. Polio. And which one do you think is the most dangerous of the three?
Tulsi.
Okay. Why Tulsi?
Because once you break uh, intel- our national intelligence security apparatus,
Okay.
all those agencies, once you break that, you can't get that back. You can't. That's gone forever. Maybe something new can be created somewhere down the line. It would take a lot because you to put a hostile foreign powers agent asset at the top of our own intelligence community apparatus, I guess, is a sort of a better way to think about it because it's a working thing. It's almost like a living. It's a lot of human beings with tremendous variety of skill sets across these agencies, all with their own technology that sort of set of it's not just skills but priorities and specialties that is complex. These are big bureaucratic machines now on top of everything else, and we are only as secure as our intelligence is pure. I would say is good. And there's always problems with it. It's not like there's a perfect thing here that's being broken. But it's functional, very, very functional. It's superior in many ways to any other nation in the world in terms of keeping us safe and secure. So, and doing so in cooperation with our allies. So you can't separate. There's no MAGA for intelligence community. there's no isolationist forefront for that's going to work. You've got to have partners,
Yeah.
and as soon as we're known not to be trusted and we're aligning ourselves because of who she is and who controls her, we're aligning ourselves with nations that are not our allies and have been our adversaries, sometimes very outwardly, for decades during Cold War years, in fighting and sort of terror regimes. So the whole thing is so goddamn dangerous. Just shame on these people. Shame on them. That's what I have to say.
And it looks like the
And
Republicans are going to just let him coast too. They're just going to be like, well,
shame on
Susan
them.
Collins, yeah, traitors, all of them.
Shame on them.
Yeah.
So she can break it to the degree that it's irreparable. She can. And I think she's probably smart enough to do it. And certainly she's being informed and has a lot of help. So, and that's the goal. You don't put someone like that in that position unless your entire intention is to poke out the eyes and cripple the legs and deafen the ears of our entire intelligence community and apparatus, national security apparatus. So it's wildly dangerous. There's no way to even quantify how dangerous it is because we don't know what type of future these Kremlin assets are going to kick us into. We really don't. It should be terrifying to everybody. And if there ever was something that people hopefully could come together with and raise an objection loud enough and strong enough that it's worthy of kicking her to the curb and finding someone else, this is the one. Tulsi Gabbard is the one. Hard no. The only thing more dangerous than her would be Mike Flynn.
Well, yeah,
he tried that in another way the first time around. So
yeah,
it's pretty bad. The next most dangerous to our safety and security and our human rights, because healthcare is a human right, the right to
it is.
Be born and live and breathe and not die, a child, to be able to have a family and not be thrown into an automatic risk of losing a child or a sibling at a very young age, and to not be sick, to be able to eat food, to be able to go and purchase food and know that you're not ingesting something that is going to kill you.
Is that important? That seems like maybe it would be important. Yeah. I don't know.
So the next most dangerous human being, I can't fathom a more dangerous person other than the first one, is RFK Jr. And the irony that he would not even be anywhere near the orbit of this if it weren't for his name.
Yep.
And the violation of human rights that this man is going to commit on day one.
Yeah. I mean, he's already committed it in Samoa. He's responsible.
He's responsible.
Almost single-handedly been the engine of all the anti-vax stuff in the United States for decades now.
Yeah.
And that's just who he is. He seems to have some sort of fetish for having little children suffocate to death, I think. I don't know. Is that like a kink?
I don't know.
Between the vaccine anti stuff with the diphtheria and now this polio business.
Yeah.
It's I'm making light of it, but it's really serious.
It's very dark.
I think he's the least likely to get approved or confirmed, though. I don't know that there's.
I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. And then Kash Patel. Listen, we survived J. Edgar Hoover. It was 50 years, I think, something like that. Talk about a gangster and a thief and it's just a corrupt. He blackmailed everybody. That's how he kept his job. And he, an agency was built up underneath him despite all of that. But I don't. It's damaging for sure. It's a terrible, horrible thing to contemplate. He should be nowhere near the head of the FBI. I just would rank it 3. I would, when it comes to the level of suffering that we're going to experience and the level of corruption we're going to experience.
I mean,
he's number 3 for me.
That guy is ranked 3rd is really saying something. Yeah. My hope is that Tulsi that the intelligence agencies individually will know how to handle someone who doesn't know anything about the intelligence community at all. That's my hope. I don't know if that will happen, but that's my hope. Did you know we have a sponsor don't know if you knew this. We have a sponsor. Let's see what this is.
Let's see.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Does nothing seem to work right on your phone, laptop, or iPad? Believe me, I get it. If there's anyone who understands how technology can pass you by, it's me. Hi, I'm Tom from MySpace, here to tell you about a new app that will fix anything. Unfuckupify. Apple ID on the fritz? Unfuckupify. FaceTime keeps crapping out? Unfuckupify. Accidentally sign all your rights to Meta in perpetuity by agreeing to the new terms of service? Unfuckupify. Unfuckupify works on dating apps too.
My Tinder profile was an incel magnet, but once I installed Unfuckupify, been one Romeo after another.
Unfuckupify's patented red tooth technology is compatible with online brokerage apps, Venmo, crypto exchanges, and gambling sites like FanDuel.
I stupidly laid money on the Giants, and I almost lost my house. But Unfuckupify let me retrieve the bet.
It even works on top secret government surveillance software like Promise, which, let's just say that clip of those Moscow hookers peeing on Donald and Melania is straight fire. So what are you waiting for? Take it from Tom from MySpace. Unfuckupify your life today. Not affiliated with Spotify, Shopify, or any other Ify software. And now, back to the show.
Yeah.
There you go. Good job, Chunk.
Good job, Chuck. Perfect
Yep.
for us.
Perfect for. I wish we could have Unfuckupify and send it to the U.S. government. That would be nice. It'd be good. I think the Biden administration needs a little Unfuckupify today.
A little bit.
All right, let's not keep our guest waiting any longer. She is a political columnist. She's the co-host of the Disorder podcast. She's a former British diplomat and was the British ambassador to Georgia. And she literally just got off the plane from there like an hour ago and is staying up late and is very jet lagged. So, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Alex. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. And I'm sorry for this rather dark, spectral scene. I had to relocate to be closer to my Wi-Fi because my kids are video gaming upstairs, and that was why we weren't getting a good signal.
Yep.
I know I look a little ghostly, but that's also partly after 24 hours of jet lag because I have flown straight from the streets of Tbilisi to be on this show.
Oh, we're so honored to have you and thrilled to just hear what you have to say and learn a little bit more. We're not getting as much news, I would say sort of front-facing news. It's something easily accessible news about what's happening there as we should, quite frankly. So maybe we could start with, do you want to, Greg, start with some top line thoughts that you have about what you just came from, what's happening there, and your takeaways. I know that's a big whole thing I just threw at you, but please take your time and walk us through it.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, I'm sorry for this very spectral image. And I know it looks like I look like death. So I spent the last week in Georgia. Georgia is a tiny nation in the heart of the Caucasus Mountains, originally part of the Soviet Union, broke free, declared independence when the Soviet Union collapsed. And ever since then, it's gone through a series of governments, kleptocracies, corruption, criminality, but bit by bit, each government has been a little bit better than the last. And in 2003, it had something called the Rose Revolution, where it threw out a very corrupt ancien regime, still affiliated with Moscow, and really started introducing democratic reforms, rule of law reforms, and very firmly committed to trying to join the EU and NATO as a way to anchor themselves at the heart of Europe, which is where they see themselves belonging, and finally breaking free from Russia. And what has been happening in the last few years is that a new government has come to power that has continued to go along with trying to join the EU and NATO, but in practice has slowly begun a process of democratic backsliding. And everything came to a head about a year ago as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because the EU, in response to the Russian invasion to Ukraine, realized it really had to make a tangible offer to countries in this sort of grey zone, the sort of countries that are trying to break free from Putin and Moscow and anchor themselves in the West. And the EU couldn't really keep them waiting any longer. So it finally granted official candidate status to Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. And for the Georgian Dream government, it was, oh no, they're finally offering us a tangible entry to the EU. And this government has been riding two horses. It's been trying to keep relations going with Russia while telling its population it was committed to the EU. And when that offer came from the EU, they realized they had to make a choice. And what has happened is, I think it has become clear that they have made a choice. They think Russia's going to win in Ukraine, that Georgia is better served staying with Russia. And so they started introducing laws to clamp down on civil society, announcing that they were going to outlaw the opposition, suppressing the free media space in Georgia. And it all came to a head just in the last 2 weeks. They had elections, which are widely believed to have been rigged and fraudulent and illegitimate. And immediately after the elections, the incumbent government announced it was putting on hold for 4 years any attempt to join the EU. And this is what straw that broke the camel's back. And I don't know how many of your listeners have been following this on the news, but it led to massive protests out on the streets in Tbilisi that have slowly spread all the way around the country. There are hundreds of thousands of Georgians, and this is a tiny country. There's less than 4 million population. So it's been huge protests, night after night after night. And today, the day that I was flying back, they even had a general strike. And they've had all these different groups of protesters. They've had IT guys, they've had human resources guys, they've had architects, artists, NGOs, aid workers. And then at 8 o'clock, they had the techno music scene coming out and protesting.
Wow.
I mean, it has been this widespread protests because what they realize, it's not really about the EU. It's about the soul of their country. Are they going to be sucked back into the Russian orbit to become a satellite of Moscow again? Or are they going to be a free and independent country? And this is just, I mean, I was ambassador there 8 years ago. We could never have imagined what we're now seeing on the streets of Tbilisi, which is sort of black-coated thugs and goons with water cannon, with tear gas. They're putting tear gas in with the water, so when you get jetted with the water spray, it stings your eyes. There are random gangs of black-coated thugs with no official insignia on them, grabbing people off the streets, throwing them in the back of vans and roughing them up very badly until they're unconscious, and then charging them with trumped up charges that they were resisting the police or they were guilty of hooliganism. Georgia has never seen this. And just for your listeners, I want to put this in perspective. They have rounded up almost 500 people now, over 80% of which have serious physical injuries because they're being beaten up in a very deliberate way. That is the equivalent of over 45,000 Americans being detained.
Wow.
If you compare the population size. So this is massive. And it's not just about the heart and soul of Georgia. This is a country, if Georgia slips back into Russia's orbit, Armenia will slip back into Russia's orbit. It's disheartening for Ukraine. This is Western credibility at stake. This is a country that sent troops to fight alongside American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. And whether or not you believe that those conflicts Well, they didn't turn out well. But this is a country that was really committed to partnership with the West. And they now have a kleptocratic regime that wants to drag them back. This is on the cusp of becoming Belarus. And it is chilling to the bone. And I'm so grateful you have me on the show to talk about this, because tomorrow is going to be a pivotal moment, because the last remaining independent institution in this country is the president, a woman called Salome Zurabishvili, who used to belong to the government and has now announced she has broken away from the government. The elections were not legitimate, that the repression on the streets is illegitimate. And they are planning to replace her tomorrow with a former footballer, a very uneducated, doesn't even have a high school diploma.
An entertainer.
And they are planning to put him in. And once he's in power, the president can declare martial law. So tomorrow is huge.
Okay.
So that's what's been going on. And we met while we were there. We met people who had been beaten up to come and tell us their story. And it's very systematic. It's deliberate and it's calculated. And they have people who come in halfway through the beating and say, wait, not so much on the face, or that guy's bleeding too much, it's enough. Or so, I mean, this is sort of deliberate and calculated. It's very sinister.
Is it Georgians doing that, do we think, or is it Russians
Is it
doing that, or
Russians?
somebody
Yeah.
else? It's because, you know,
Kind of like the
this
little
is-
green men, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Ivan the Terrible invented this in the 16th century, by the way. This is an ancient Russian thing. Yeah.
that's a very good comparison. So some people are saying it's similar to the Maidan in Ukraine in 2014. It's these people without any insignia. Some people are saying this is Belarus. They are Georgians, but the tactics are Russian. And they are Georgians because the Georgian government, it's not like Russia is trying to push out the current government. The current government is acting on behalf of Moscow, and
Right.
it's Georgians who are being paid to do this. The country is run by an oligarch who made his money in Moscow in the 1990s in the chaos of the sort of Yeltsin years. And his private wealth is equivalent to 40% of Georgia's national wealth. I mean, it's just astonishing. In relative terms, it makes Elon Musk look like an amateur. This guy's wealth is equivalent to 40% of Georgia's wealth. And he has bought up every single state institution. So when somebody gets roughed up and then they get brought before the courts, the judges are all in the pockets of this oligarch. And when the defendant says, I wasn't doing anything, I was peacefully protesting, look, you can see on my face, I've got all these bruises. And the judge will say that's not relevant to the court case. And then they will have policemen come in and say, yeah, this guy was throwing bottles at us. And the policeman wasn't even there. I mean, they are just making things up. And it is very chilling.
Okay,
It's
Alex,
very chilling.
what can be done then? What can be done? You're here, you're speaking about it, bearing witness to it, spreading the word about it. What's needed there? What do they need?
So there are two big things. I mean, this is something that Biden can do. We don't have a huge lot at stake in Georgia. We can put sanctions on the leadership there. We're not going to lose some massive contract or some vital strategic gateway somewhere. The costs of action are fairly low. We need to put sanctions on the leaders to dispel the myth that the West is afraid to act, that we're not serious about our democratic values, and that this oligarch, Ivanishvili, who believes he's untouchable, he is not untouchable. The other reason it matters is because the regime is pinning their hopes on Donald Trump not caring, that when Donald Trump comes to power, they will get away with it. And Donald Trump doesn't care about Russia, doesn't care about human rights and democracy. And the regime is making a mistake, actually. There are a lot of Republican members of Congress who care a lot about Georgia. arguably, I would say, more than Democrats. And this country, under the current government, has also started signing deals with China and has developed very close relationships with Iran. Donald Trump is not a fan of China and is not a fan of Iran. But we need to send a signal that there is bipartisan consensus that we don't support the trajectory of this government. Just yesterday, Antony Blinken announced visa restrictions, but it's not enough. We need sanctions. Ivanishvili's daughter studies in New York. Why is she here?
Yeah.
So there is a lot we can do, and the protesters need it. Every single person we met, they said, look, we know this is our struggle. Ultimately, it's for us to win this fight, but we need you to add that pressure. We can't do this alone. We need to build up pressure until the regime itself begins to crack. There are so many regime officials who have children who study in Europe or have money in the UK or who have connections or partnerships in the US. We need to put pressure on them until the people around Bidzina Ivanishvili begin to think, you know, this isn't actually working out that well. We may be backing the wrong horse here. And we know there's a lot of people within the Georgian Dream government, within the Georgian Dream supporters who are not happy about this because they thought this government was committed to the EU trajectory. It's in the Georgian constitution.
Because they played it both ways. They played it a certain way in order to get
bait and switch
support,
Yeah.
and then did the bait and switch. And,
Exactly.
and people are like, wait a minute, this wasn't supposed to be why we supported you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the Western's credibility on the line. I mean, we've all seen these awful images from Syria. 14 years ago or 10 years ago, we did not enforce that red line in Syria.
Yeah.
And Syria descended into a nightmare of brutality that we are just beginning to see emerging again. And the juxtaposition of us having failed to enforce that red line in Syria, and now, are we just going to do the same with Georgia and let it slip into its own nightmare? The people are really scared. These are people who believe in democracy. They've trusted us as their ally. We have to be there for them. And as I was saying, the costs to us are not that high of putting sanctions on and pressuring this regime, but the costs of inaction. Many people think that failure in Syria is partly what emboldened Putin today.
Absolutely.
That failure to react when Putin seized Crimea, that failure to act when Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, that repeated signal of weakness. We need to show we're serious. Russia's on the back foot right now. They've lost ground in Syria. Are we just going to give them Georgia as a consolation prize? So I'm sorry to sound so serious about this. But
No, it's
really
wonderful.
matters.
No, we're so grateful that you're speaking so clearly about what could be handled as this sort of complex thing, but it's not. Sanctions are a straightforward result, especially when you've got, it sounds like a burgeoning or maybe established oligarchy with one oligarch, right? It's like, make it painful for the person with the money. That's underwriting this whole thing. And the way you make it painful for the person with the money is you cut them off from what their money purchase is capable of, the lifestyle that they're, as soon as very wealthy people feel like, wait a minute, I can't have the toys and the lifestyle and all the fancy rarefied air that I so covet. As soon as you or maybe have their fancy friends turn on them and say, yeah, we can't, sorry, you're not invited to the parties anymore. It goes like that. They'll do whatever.
You've got it perfectly.
Yeah.
You've got it perfectly. We need to help these people, and it's within our realm. I mean, right now, I would say it's 60-40 which way this is going to go. Right now, the regime thinks it can brazen it out. They think they can wait till Trump comes in. And they have shown by their actions they're willing to suppress quite hard. And it's only a matter of time before someone dies. On the other hand, This is a people's uprising. It's not being led by the opposition. It's led by these random groups, like I said, like the techno dance group, the architects. We met poets,
love it.
writers. They're all coming out, but they need to know we're with them. Otherwise, it plays into the narrative. You know what? When it gets really tough, the West, actually, they leave us alone. And maybe Moscow's right.
Do you
Yeah, well,
think that
that
Syria
last part is the
falling?
most dangerous part.
I
Maybe
mean,
they're right.
Syria right now is just like in the last 2 weeks, Assadi's gone now, which I don't think anybody really saw coming. Does that help there, do you think? Or is it related in any way? Or the two
Yeah,
tied
well,
together?
I mean, I think what it shows, the collapse of Syria, is these authoritarian regimes, they rule by fear or they rule
Yeah.
by money and state capture, but they can be very brittle. They can collapse very quickly. And I think the message that Assad, the downfall of Assad shows is you should not be trusting Russia. Russia is not your friend. You know, Russia doesn't care about Georgia. It's just an instrument. And my other worry is that that Putin is thinking, well, if I don't get all I want in Ukraine, and especially since I have egg on my face over Assad, Georgia is a nice consolation prize. And if I can get back Georgia, that is really going to have a sinister effect on Armenia, that in the last year has moved meaningfully out of Moscow's orbit. Armenia will be dragged back in as well. So it's a kind of consolation prize, or it's a bargaining chip. We know that Donald Trump wants to start trying to negotiate a peace deal in Ukraine. If Georgia goes in the next couple of weeks, that's a nice ace up Putin's sleeve. So
Yeah.
this really matters.
Donald Trump thinks that Georgia is where Herschel Walker played at college. Like, he does not know where Georgia is. I'm quite convinced he has
No,
no
he
idea that this
actually
is.
it was Batumi, right? He had a Trump hotel.
Yeah.
Broke ground. They just broke ground, and then the money got laundered through that. You just need an architect and plans, and he showed up with a shovel, and that was it. I don't think a single thing was built, but that was a pretty corrupt real estate transaction that he did for I don't know who, somebody.
Yeah,
and
I don't think it went anywhere. There are reports. It's hard to know that Bidzina Ivanishvili, this Russian oligarch I was telling about, gave quite a lot of money to the Trump campaign through CPAC so that his name wasn't personally on it. And during Trump won, he tried extremely hard to sort of get close to Trump, and Trump was completely uninterested. I mean, Georgia is just not that important to Donald Trump. And the Georgian government, the incumbent government, thinks that Viktor Orban of Hungary will be their champion.
Oh, okay.
Washington.
Maybe he will. Maybe he will go in.
Well, most commentators in Georgia we met don't think that's very likely either. Viktor Orban has his own interests. So Viktor Orban has said he will block EU sanctions on Georgia. He will veto them. And that's given the Georgian government some encouragement. But there's already talk in the EU of just bypassing Hungary and every country just imposing their own national sanctions and creating a coalition of the willing. So Hungary's influence is not going to be definitive on this either.
Okay.
But we have to push now, because the next 10 days, if the current president is ousted, this new president is installed and declares martial law, we're in big trouble. The Georgians are in big trouble.
Okay.
It seems like I mean, we have to hit Putin every place that we possibly can.
Absolutely.
I think this is a no-brainer. Like and it's also it's a microcosm of the whole, democracy versus dictatorship kind of thing, oligarchy / dictator that we're dealing with here.
Absolutely.
So,
and what would the Chinese think? We know the Chinese have ambitions on Taiwan. How we handle Ukraine, how we handle Georgia, we either handle as from a position of strength, or we look weak. And in this case, we can make a difference. I believe we can make a difference.
Okay, Alex.
I hope that we will. Now, I don't want to keep you up too late, because I know that you're. But I want to ask you a little bit closer to home. I want to ask you about Britain and what your thoughts are about Keir Starmer so far, because I can't figure it out. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of chatter. What's he done right? What's he done wrong? What's your take on him so far?
Okay. So he's not Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. Those are good points in my point of view. He
Yes.
is a conscientious, decent person. Those are fairly low bars, one would think, but given the dreadful Conservative government that we had and the fact that many members of the Conservative Party are now embracing Donald Trump, and then we have this more extreme right-wing party called Reform, headed by a absolute snake oil salesman called Nigel Farage,
We know
who
of him.
We know him.
been cozying up to Donald Trump. The Donald Trump effect is working its way into British politics. By contrast with all of that, Keir Starmer is a politician in a more traditional mold. He respects the norms and conventions of democracies. He is respectful. He tries to do things in the right way. What I worry about him is a little bit what happened with Biden. Biden was not a great communicator. Starmer is not a great communicator. Much of the British press is owned by Rupert Murdoch or other offshore businessmen who have their own interests. It's hard for him to get a fair shake in the press. And I do worry that he could have an experience a little bit like Biden, where despite coming in with a very convincing win, he fails to deliver enough. And in the next election, we get the risk of the Conservatives, or even worse, Reform, coming back in. And Starmer has not been able to spell out a sufficiently clear narrative or be able to drive through with sufficiently clear purpose, a clear vision for the UK. So I think he's a good and he's a decent person. And I think he's committed to tackling inequality, to trying to grow the economy. The other problem we have in the UK is that ever since Brexit, our political class became frightened to say Brexit was a wrong choice, because there were people on both sides of the political aisle that supported it. There were voters, working class voters. So it's sort of a little bit like the blue collar workers in the Rust Belt that went over to Trump. They were traditional Democrat voters, union workers, steel workers that went over to Trump. There were a lot of traditional working class voters who bought the lie that the EU was the source of all our problems and that leaving the EU would make everything better. And Starmer was trying to win them back. So he's been frightened to call out the Brexit lies. And so he's trying to grow our economy with one hand tied behind our back because we've damaged trade with our nearest partners.
Yeah.
And now he's going to be faced with a really difficult choice. His values do not align with Donald Trump at all. But Britain's security depends on our relationship with the US. We have an incredibly close intelligence relationship, closer than any other country is the US, UK. We have a very close intertwined military, and our nuclear deterrent depends on the US. But our economy, it's in our interests to rebuild a relationship with the EU. And people around Donald Trump are trying to say to the UK, you know, you should try and do a trade deal with us. You should not go back to the EU. And we are being faced with a very difficult choice. Can we ride that US and that EU horse at once, at one and the same time? And finally, that strategic decision that Brexit created is facing us because Trump wants to pull us away. And then we'll just become a weak satellite of the US.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous for us. And if we want to build up our military, and Trump is saying to all European countries, you need to build up your militaries, which I think he's right about. But we need to build them up because of what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening with Russia. Irrespective of Donald Trump, we need to be doing it. But if our economy is cratering, we can't build up our economy. And a true friend of Britain would say, yeah, rebuild your relations with the EU. It's in our interests to have a strong EU. But Trump is not like that. He's trying to divide. And the
He
UK
wants to end NATO.
and NATO.
Yeah.
So we're in a very difficult situation.
Well,
Oh,
you can rest easy
So
because when
sorry.
Tulsi Gabbard is the director of national intelligence, I'm sure everybody in Britain can sleep easy. I think it's gonna be totally fine. Everything's
Oh
gonna be
my
ju-
goodness.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just
we're
a-
not going to share intelligence with Tulsi Gabbard
No,
as head of
course not.
NDI.
right.
But,
That's
you
what
know-
that was that was the sense I got listening to Chris Steele talking on Arthur Snell's podcast. Happening. They're not gonna go there.
We
No.
can't.
and shouldn't. Yeah.
And you
Oh.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
not good.
God help us.
Now, okay, it's 8:53, and you've been traveling for like I think the last 72 hours. So I'm exaggerating only slightly. Is there anything else you think people should know before we release you?
No, I'm tired. I mean, there's probably 1,000 things. Have me back on some other time. I will
You
say,
got it.
lovely guests who are listening, that please follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky, because I rant away quite undiplomatically. I resigned as a British diplomat in 2019 as a matter of conscience. So I'm now quite undiplomatic. And yes, my surname really is the dumb, stupid version Hall Hall. That is not a misprint. I know it's very stupid. So you can follow
I
me.
love it. I think it's the coolest
We
name. I
love
really do. Like not even ironically. I think it's great. Yeah.
And if my husband hadn't drunk all the whiskey in our house, I would be drinking a nice nightcap with you.
You have to have a drink ready when you come back on. We're having you back on for
Okay.
sure. When you've got some rest and you
Especially
have the
this-
whiskey of your choice.
We have to have you back on soon to find out what happened. This is like a cliffhanger now, except
Yeah.
it's not a TV show. It's like very real. So let's.
So I will have lots to say about other things, but right now my brain is shutting down. So thank you so much for having me on.
Alex, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming and staying up with us. Thanks so much. Have a great
All right.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, Alex.
Bye.
I love her.
She's great, right?
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah. No, that's and you know the Georgia. I think the Georgia thing's really important because
Yeah,
it's like a microcosm, and these things matter. Like optically, they matter. You know, watching Assad collapse in Syria matters. That's a hit on Putin. And if these littler countries can achieve the same thing, you know, it just signals his weakness. And he's a guy that, you know, he cares about this stuff, about his weakness because he's weak.
Yeah. He's
Vladimir
tiny.
the Puny.
He's also teeny tiny. He's about this big. Little,
I think now the way that we have the show plans.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, I got to go back to the comments page. Okay. The way that we have the show planned is that I think 4 and 5 should flow into each other. So we should do announcements now if we have any.
Oh, that's a good thought.
Yeah.
Okay. We were going to do an after hours.
We're going to do after hours.
Are we doing it? It's just a quick hit, guys. So
Yeah. You've got a good story.
Yeah, I got
you've got tea.
There's
Yeah.
a story I'm going to tell, another like a sub. Again, the evening Wednesday, there were lots of things happening, all
Mhm.
layered and at once. So there's one story I will tell you guys. Alec Baldwin always hosts this event. He was a longtime friend of the Kennedy family and Ethel Kennedy, and so it's related to that. So I'll tell that story, but I will only tell it in the after hours because it doesn't fit with our show here. But I know you want to hear it, and it's good. It's positive. It's like there was a positive arc. So it's not, you know, this isn't gossipy spilling tea. There's just a lot of positive. It's hard what we're up against, but I came out with a lot of positive threads and I just didn't expect it. So
There was a marked change in your entire outlook, I would say.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Not to be
I
like
I felt
no
residually.
hopium. There's no hopium. Just you know.
Everyone's complaining about my audio. I'm doing the exact same thing that I've always.
I know
It's this new laptop.
fuzzy. It's zipping in and out and,
I don't know.
and being fuzzy. So maybe it'll
I
be a little better.
apologize.
We'll see what
I don't know.
happens.
I don't know. I'll try something on the after hours that maybe will be better.
Okay, that sounds good. So that's the only announcement I've got. You got anything?
I've got, you know, I wrote a thing about what Biden can do in the last.
Yes.
couple weeks,
Yeah.
and there's a lot
Thank
of
you for
things
that.
there. Yeah, and therefore I was on a bunch of podcasts this week. I was on with our guy Tony Michaels. I was on with Cliff Schechter. I was on with Sherry Jacobus. And I think that's floating out there now.
Nice.
Always super fun to talk to Sherry because she's been on this such a long time.
Yeah.
So do I have any other announcements? I don't know. That's it.
I don't
That's it. It's
know.
almost it's December. It's Friday the 13th. It's
Friday
December
the
13th.
thirteenth.
It's gonna be Christmas soon. As you know, my son's birthday is on Christmas. So
Yeah.
you know, it's a thing.
Yeah.
That's my only announcement. Okay.
Okay. I got a
Yeah.
pillow behind me today.
All
I
right.
normally don't wear this color, as I was sharing with you, because it's the green screen color. So don't
I like
anybody
the
get any
green.
ideas and green screen me.
It also matches with the whole like kind of like aesthetic of the show because it's like pool table, you know?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a pool table.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But in
All
a
right.
good way.
So take us into this next. I'm going to put the timer back on.
So
So we don't go super late.
yeah, we don't want to go super late.
Yeah. Take us into
Uh,
this, the new serfdom.
Yeah, so we were talking about this, and you coming out of this event that we're going to talk about in the fifth thing, and just kind of rethinking it. I think this is what everyone's doing now, kind of like rethinking, reframing, trying to figure out how we can move forward with things and what it amounts to, and what and sometimes getting knocked off your trajectory helps you figure shit out. I know in my life,
Do it. Okay. You're fuzzy. Say that again, that last part.
no, I think being knocked off your trajectory helps sometimes
Yeah.
because you're going, it's like you're riding a horse and suddenly you fall off the horse, which I've never done, but apparently is bad. And then you're sitting there in the mud and you're like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? How can I learn from this experience? How can I frame this going forward? Maybe I should just like ride a bike instead of a horse or whatever,
No, you have to get right back on the horse in that scenario. But
Okay, right. Because yes, hackneyed things. So what we've come up with here is that we're 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 going into a new frame of government, I think, and I think we've been hinting around this frame of government for
yeah.
some time. Okay, it's not a democratic necessarily, but it's about oligarchy, and it doesn't. The Westphalian order has fallen. That's what's happened. Okay, this has been going on for a long, long time, and what that means is that we have sovereign states, and the states have power over their sovereign areas, and Putin fucked it up. He invaded, the Syria thing messed it up. The Crimea thing certainly messed it up. The West just stood by and did nothing. And that meant that having a sovereign nation didn't matter anymore. So we're in a new path, and we're into the path of what Oliver Bullough calls moneyland or moneylanders, which is it's not about the nation state, it's about the money and where the money can travel and how the money, like the super wealthy people, as you know, LB, they go wherever they need to be to take advantage of the laws in those jurisdictions. So if they're setting up a corporation, maybe it's in St. Kitts or Delaware or South Dakota or whatever.
Or
If they're going to
Jersey,
right,
Isle of Jersey. Yeah.
right. If they're going to sue somebody for libel, they're going to do it in the UK. Which, by the way, fix your fucking libel laws, Britain. Come on now. Terrible there, right? They're going to do that there. And move stuff around as Bank of Cyprus, whatever. There's all these money laundering places, and there's as we have these oligarchs, these people like these Elon Musks and these like gigantically wealthy people, as we've seen again. Georgia is a microcosm of all of this. We're entering into, I think, kind of a neo-serfdom, I would say, right? And again, I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this, and I think this is where we're going. And we'll talk about human rights in a second. This is a book called The Making of the Middle Ages, which I've read from before. This is R.W. Southern, who's one of the great experts in this. And I'm going to read this slowly because the thing about serfdom is that I think it's misunderstood in some ways. It's different than slavery and serfdom. Comes from the same Latin root word, but it's a different arrangement. Slavery goes with fascism, goes with dictatorship, where you're sort of forced to do these things.
Forced labor and
Yeah.
without compensation and blah, blah, blah.
Serfdom is different. So I'm going to read from this book here. Okay. We must ignore the old Latin name which they used, and see the transaction as a way of establishing a new claim to a man's loyalty and aid. Land, and now he's talking about the Middle Ages in the 11th century. Land was plentiful. Laborers were relatively few. The greatest problem for an estate manager was to ensure full cultivation. Landlords were not above competing for labor. The condition of serfdom, though it did not take away a man's property, which it didn't, that's a misnomer or misconception, prevented him from moving elsewhere. Probably most of those who came into this condition were already working on the land as tenants of the Lord to whom they delivered their freedom. Henceforth, the Lord was assured of their continued service and would pay a price for this assurance. So it's an arrangement. It's a transaction, right? When the employee of a great industrial concern today, this book was written in 1951, accepts a substantial sum on condition that he will not move elsewhere, he is doing in a grand way what thousands of men, large and small, were doing in the 11th century. The modern firm is not interested in securing the services of its tied men's children, and for good reason, they might be useless. I love jokes from 1951. The less selective 11th century landlord thought otherwise. The guarantee of service bound also the serf's children, blah, blah. And this is another thing. The new relationship secured advantages to both sides. To the lord, hereditary labor; to the serf, a mixture of advantages from a simple money payment or an additional holding of land to the benefits of religious fraternity. So what this means now is, and what I'm taking in from it is that it's a give and take. The oligarchs can be in charge, but it cannot be a system where it is completely Orwellian Big Brother stuff, right? We still have, and as you're going to talk about in the 5th segment, we have tremendous power, and we have to talk about things in the frame of human rights and what human rights are. And the commodity that we're dealing with isn't labor on a farm or whatever, like it was in the 11th century. It's our time. And this is the theme of the episode. It's time. When we talk about time, okay, what do we say? We spend time. When someone goes to prison, what do?
They do time.
That's
what
the
what you're
worst thing that can
paying
happen,
into. You're paying with your time because that's
that's
the
the
one
most
thing that we have that
valuable
is
thing you have.
most valuable.
Exactly. It's a sacrifice that you're making because you screwed up something and you're going to give your time because that's it. That's what you've got. So, again, the differences between serfdom and slavery are that we own our own time. Time is our own commodity. And in the United States right now, and even under Donald Trump, nobody's going to be able to take that away from us. So time is a commodity and human rights are a right. And we have to identify what the human rights are. And
Human rights are the given thing that comes, we have our time, which we have agency over how we spend it, what we do with it. It is a currency, a commodity that if we are imprisoned, if something happens to us, it's our time that they take from us. It's not just your freedom. That's the connection, right? It's
Right.
like, it's not just that you're not, we're taking this much time. That's the measurement of sacrifice of freedom, but it's, I
know these ideas are like
no.
forming.
I'm not. I just wanted to the preciousness of that. When you look at then what you can do, what you have to put on the table, those protests in Georgia, right?
Right.
Those protests were people saying, you know what? We're stopping. We're stopping the time that we were given to our regular lives, going to work, doing whatever. We're going to now commit it here as a group in a concentrated effort to move. We're going to bring all of our chips together, spend time together with this one cause at the forefront, our democracy, which is what's ensuring our rights. So these things are all connected together, and push for what we want in terms of how we want who we want to be. What do we want our society to be? That we want rule of law. We don't want to be Russian or a Russian outlet anymore. We're
Fuck
or
that.
to be dragged back to that. We want to create our own nation. We want that sovereign status that is something that can just be robbed, and that the West supposedly, and our society, free societies, are supposed to come in support of when someone else is losing that.
Yes.
So these are great big, not just ideas, but real things happening in the world and in the human condition that we have to begin to start tying together in a meaningful way and connect it to what actions we're going to take and where do we stand. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go right into this next.
Yeah. No, the timer, because again, time.
The time. I'm not going to set the timer on this because I want to get through
Just
this
go. We
and
have
we're done.
plenty of time. We
Yeah.
have time.
We have time. And we don't want to take for granted anybody else's time, even listening to us. It just, we got really present to that. That is the preciousness and the commodity that it seems that an oligarchy is coming after, right? They want our labor. They want to separate us from the resources that our life, we've spent our time accumulating.
Right.
You know, our Social Security benefits, these things that are supposed to be secured for us, that we are entitled to because it's our money that we made, and therefore we're entitled to it.
Mhm.
That's why it's an entitlement.
Right.
Because it's mine.
Yep.
You know, the government said, we'll keep it safe for you, and you don't have a choice. We're going to take it out, but we'll keep it safe for you. It's yours. You spent all your time earning all this money. We're going to keep it for you, and then it'll be there for you when you need it.
Mhm.
That doesn't get Elon Musk isn't all of a sudden entitled to that. Mitch McConnell, who's always wanted to take it, isn't now, nor has he ever been entitled to my entitlement.
Paul Ryan used to play
Paul
college
Ryan
drinking
wanted
games.
it. So that's
you
just sort of one little example. Here's what happened on Wednesday night.
Mm.
So I think like a lot of folks that I've seen in our audience, because I've seen the comments and the feedback, and I love it, you guys. Just in the past, we've been trying to talk about this and wrap our arms around this unknown future that we are being flung into, right?
Mm.
That we can all feel. And you can turn on cable news and hear fascism. And we've said fascism before, you know, and, oh, it's an autocracy. Oh, well, wait, it's an oligarchy. I think it's pretty clear we're careening into formalizing an oligarchy. We're an oligarchical, we've had oligarchs, right? They're American oligarchs. They're these people who have all this money and wealth, but connecting that to government resources and handing our national resources over to wealthy individuals who feel that they're just entitled to it. And because they used their wealth and their vast resources to install a president, to make sure their guy got elected and their people are elected in the other branches of government, so that land can be handed over. Space contracts continue to be handed over. All of our national resources that our tax dollars, our time put in to earn the money to then pay into our country, that all should just be funneled into the personal pockets of a few very wealthy, mostly men, or in these conglomerates, these corporate conglomerates that have been merging and growing and siloing themselves, and sort of swallowing everything up, like our news media and journalism and all of this, right? That these big corporations, all headed by billionaires now, that's our leadership now. That's our governance, right? We're foregoing self-governance. You know, it's not just that my vote didn't matter and other people's votes didn't matter because we didn't get the person we wanted into office. It's that's not my power anymore because the system has changed.
Yeah.
So it used to be my vote was my big, powerful thing that I had. And it's still precious to me, as long as it's not a complete farce which Donald Trump is promising it to be, by the way. And a lot of people
Mhm.
are that he's got around him are saying we don't need elections anymore. So, and it was a farce in Georgia, right? They figured out it's a farce in Russia every time,
Huh.
just a fake fucking election. I don't think that we're there yet, but we might be in the next election. Who knows? Because that's part of the unknown. So that precious thing that was my sole, sort of pinnacle of power as a citizen is just it's lost it for me because the system is now different. The system's different.
Right.
So I've been like a little bit, I think my panic, and I've been beside myself, sort of like, well, what's my power as a citizen? What do I do? And I just went into this internal space of, you know what? I'm just going to take care of myself, take care of my family. That's it. Fuck everybody else. It's just, we got to all just take care of our own. And I think a lot of that is true, but it's because I couldn't see where my power actually would be. And Wednesday, I got a big sort of breakthrough thought of where my power and all of our power is with an oligarchy. So I'm at this Ripple of Hope Award gala, and it's really the commitment to human rights and fighting for human rights. And that became really prominent in my mind of like, oh, okay, this is like, what's also our bottom line? What do we protest for? Where do we draw a line and say, okay, fuck it. I'm going out in the street. I'm not showing up. I'm not going to work. I'm going to go out in the street and I'm going to protest, or I'm going to commit my time to this thing. Where do I resist? How do I resist an oligarchy? What does that look like? Where are the red lines that I need to draw and know that it's been crossed? And so I need to stand up and speak out because the system is so different. I've never lived in this system. I don't know what this is. And so Wednesday night, I got a real big dose of it. And the first big dose was this thing that happened it's just these people that work for this foundation and the Kennedys that actually are the ones really engaged in it and moving it forward and getting real results in the world on behalf of human rights. They work really hard. They're very committed. They're very plugged in. They're very intelligent. They're very well resourced to know what they're talking about when it comes to the state of the world and where we fit into it, specific and oriented around human rights and fighting for human rights. And who did they give awards to? So they give awards every year, the Ripple of Hope Award, to people who have made a massive impact in some area of human rights. And they have lots of different categories and ways that they look at it. And it's sort of like a Malala kind of thing. I'm not saying she was one of the recipients. I mean, like, it's like people you think of like activists or, somebody involved in, transforming journalism in some area that is, journalists are getting murdered, things like that. This year, in addition to Lin-Manuel, I can't remember the artist, because there's always a big artist that gets an award as well, and who's doing good, incredible work for what he did in Puerto Rico and his continued commitment there. But the recipients that are from the community that are names that maybe you don't know, or maybe you do, we're all business leaders. And it just, very wealthy people, successful people, extremely CEOs, and big managers of funds. And, there was 4 of them, I think. You can read about them. It's on the website. I was going to read them off, but I'm going on a little bit long. And they each came up and spoke and were acknowledged for the work that they're doing philanthropically or within their own companies. And these are people who, one man is when it comes to just labor, as in justice, and like, this is the best place to work for the environment of the employees, and their own sort of how they're treated in the workplace. It was number 1 in the world. Right? And you sit back and go, oh shit, that's a really big thing. It just sort of started to hit me that what was being put forward, and they were amazing. The speeches were great. They talked about how they did what was important to them and who inspired them, and it's all the great stuff that you get at a gala. It's all fine. And extraordinary people. But here was Kerry Kennedy primarily and the whole foundation putting forward, in this era that we're careening towards, whether consciously or not, examples of an oligarch class that actually stands for human rights and did a lot of I'm going to make 1 million Black American jobs that are single family earning incomes and support the family. Like, okay, that's a major commitment, and he's doing it. That's his big commitment. So it's none of these people, you can put in any of them up against Elon Musk, and the contrast is astounding, right?
Wait. So you're saying they didn't bring a sink?
They didn't bring a
thing?
sink.
Okay.
These are serious people doing
So
serious
sink.
work and have had wild success because
No
of
pony. Okay.
it. No pony, no promises for exchange for sexual favors. Not who knows. But yeah, it's not even in the same universe, and yet it is, because we're entering an oligarchy. We elected a businessman for the first time ever with no qualifications or anything in 2016. He was a unmitigated disaster, just catastrophic failure.
He killed 600,000 people.
He's killed 600,000 Americans. We could list it all. We've listed it all before. There was just a 4-year break from that, mounted an insurrection, right? Tried to overthrow the government so he could stay in power.
They were forests. What are you talking about?
It's just unreal, right? It's unreal. It's unreal. And America decided, we're putting that guy back in. And the person who made sure that was going to happen was one oligarch who was speaking regularly to the Kremlin.
Yeah. Who's South African, by the way? Who's not
South
American?
African.
Who is here almost certainly
He's
illegally.
here illegally by all of investigative journalist reports. So that doesn't have to be the only way. There's examples out there that if this is what we're getting into, it doesn't only have to look that way. This neo-serfdom, the era that we're going into, that we can't do anything about because we've done it to ourselves. We've done this to ourselves. And if he succeeds in undoing the tenets of democracy, we are not really going to be able to undo it, at least not quickly. It's not like, well, in 4 years that'll be over again. We can't Nancy Pelosi this like she did. Oh, he's gone now.
Oh my God, the symbolism.
Right? We can't.
Yeah.
Whether we have a broken hip or not, we can't. It's the hip's broken. It's done. We did it to ourselves. We did this. We're in this world now. So what power do we have? Well, we can see if we're getting gaslit by the oligarchs of like, well, there's nothing we can do. We just have to take your Social Security. Sorry. We wish we didn't have to be. We can say, no. There's another way to be. Here's some examples of of people who are not doing that are in your class. It's not necessary. That's bullshit, right? The next thing to do is to sort of say, okay, I have power here. Americans have never really done economic strikes. We don't know what that is. We've not ventured there, but we can learn it.
Hold on. The very first boycott ever in the history of Earth that succeeded was the Tea Party, the Boston Tea Party.
Boston Tea Party.
That was a long time ago. It was the last time we attempted it. But it's not true that it's not in our DNA because it's in our
okay. So
DNA.
it is in our DNA, but we've lost touch.
I just thought of this now. No,
Good.
we haven't.
Thank you.
We're all feet losers now
So-
for sure. But yeah,
They rely not just, oligarch class relies not just on our time, on taking our time and us committing our time to being their laborers or being their whatever, right? They need our other resources as well. And we can withhold them.
Yes.
If you're going to go and take your national platform that you're calling a news channel and spend, your sacred hours of people watching you, lecturing them about how you had to go and kiss the ring of Donald Trump because you had to be a diplomat, and what does anybody expect? And you're all just such children. How can you not understand that? You know what happened to people who tried that? They lost 40% of their audience. They said, we're not giving you our time. And because of
Time is
that,
valuable.
they're starting to lose their money. It's valuable. We can consolidate and withdraw. The economic sanctions that Alex was just asking for against that oligarch will work. When you have overlords that their only thing they care about is money and profit, and that's what they're putting forward as their big strength, we can hit them there. So when do we hit them in their wallets? When do we make it really hard for our new leadership class and this new thing that's happening to us? Where do we draw our lines? And that's the other thing that Wednesday night delivered for me. Oh, human rights. Human rights. When we see violations, we must strike.
Yep.
So for me, the first one that came into my mind is that saying, I can't believe I'm saying it. I mean, I believe it. I always believed it, but it was Bernie Sanders who really drove it home. Healthcare is a human right. This event also took place at the Hilton, where the guy was executed right outside as he was coming in, the CEO. So that was echoing or rippling, not to be too pedestrian about the thematic words here, through the evening as well. It was layered. Like I said, there was a lot going on many layers.
There's a lot going on.
There was a lot of great conversations, but this idea that we have to just lay down and take this, there's nothing we can do about it, is wrong.
It's not true. It's not
This
true.
idea of being in a state of fear because we don't really know what's ahead of us. Well, there's a lot we don't know, but what we do know is that our oligarchy, our American oligarchs, the Jeff Bezos, everybody that's like, the tech bros that are all jumping on board with Donald Trump now, everybody who can't wait to get down there and be friends with him. And
Mark
they're
Zuckerberg
also excited.
kissing the fucking ring.
Right. What those people are excited about is they think they're going to be even wealthier.
Yep.
They're excited about their money. We don't have to buy from Amazon. We can just say, nope, you're taking a hit. Because we know where the super rich, what they care about, where they get their superpower from is just their wallet, we can affect that. We can take our time back. It's ours. We can use it as we see fit. And we might just see fit to, if we're watching you and you betray democracy, you start violating us in some way, you're advancing a violation of human rights, we don't have to give you our time. If that's how you make your money is off of our time. If how you make your money is we purchase your goods and services, we don't have to do that. We don't have to. So look, we can become the sanctioning body. I don't care how much.
That's good. That's a good
they
analogy.
get.
I like that.
I don't care how much that these folks have influence in platforms and can have their troll farms come out and scream, cancel culture. I don't care. Yeah, it's cancel culture.
Ernest
we're being
Owens
ruled
likes
by
cancel
oligarchs.
culture.
This is what we
He
have.
says it's good. Cancel culture is good, says Ernest, our friend of the show.
Cancel culture is good, says
Wrote a whole
Ernest.
book about it. He did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's our power.
Yeah.
It's almost a relief because it's not like we're being razzled and dazzled with, wonky policy disputes in both sidesism, right? And trying to right? It's just very straightforward. These are very wealthy people and they want more wealth. And they control policy.
Mhm.
Literally, Elon's in there going to be empowered to slash budgets of government agencies. We can hit that guy in his wallet.
The thing about him and most of these people, the bad ones,
Yeah.
is that they can't do anything. They're just good at stealing shit.
They're
Musk
pirates.
developed he's a pirate. That's not a talent. Remember in the movie The Player, right?
Yeah.
Where there's
Oh,
the
yeah.
executive, there's the film executive, and he's in a altercation with the writer, and the writer says, "I can write, and you do," and that's it. He winds up dead, but he's not wrong because this guy can't do shit. Skill set. They're just thieves. They're pirates. That's all they are.
They're pirates. Right. And so we don't have to, you still need someone to row your ship. I'm not rowing today.
Yeah. You know what?
You don't get my time. Not doing it. I don't think Twitter collapsing matters. And we have to be able to really measure that. Like what really matters? What's a cost? What's a loss for them? The cost benefit of installing Donald for Lon, apparently, according to quite a bit of reporting, is that he got to kill an investigation the FBI or the Department of Justice had into him. We don't know the details of the investigation, but he was under investigation. So, he didn't want his time taken away, did he?
You know what kills them? Freedom of movement. Curtail the freedom of movement. That's what you do with oligarchs. If this Georgian fucker has to just stay in Georgia for the rest of his life, Georgia's a lovely place, but
yeah. Remember how the Russian oligarch kids were crying because their Instagram accounts weren't they couldn't influence the way they wanted to. You make their kids complain to them.
Yeah.
It's not hard to work these people. They're not complex.
Another difference between us and the serfs is that there was a religious component to serfdom, which he goes into in great detail. This book is wonderful, by the way, in great detail about how there's this whole we don't have that here. It's really just ultimately you need us to do if we don't work the farm, there ain't no food for you, Lord of the Manor. That's just it. There's, it's like Percy Shelley said in Mask of Anarchy, we are many, ye are few. That's it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. We have the numbers, and ultimately at the end of the day, the numbers are what wins.
Yeah. So leadership is needed there. I'm not saying I'm one of those leaders, but I can see a path. I couldn't see a path before. Now I can see a path. Will there be enough people that can also see that path and somebody really necessary, if not a lot of necessary people to lead others down that path? I hope so. But I just wanted to say tonight and spend my time here and your time saying, I see a path. There is a path. And again, oligarchs aren't complex. You can figure them out.
Very simple.
Very simple. Upset the people with money around their money and make it clear. Well, tell your guy, the president, that he needs to stop X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Because human rights are being violated.
Stop denying so many claims. Too soon? Sorry. So we're going to do that after hours at 9:45. Does that work for you?
I think that's good.
Because I think ultimately what you're saying, if we can distill it into a single phrase, is
we're going to get through it.